Is street racing legal in Texas? Have you been arrested for street racing? Is there a way to beat a street racing charge in Texas? Hi, I'm Jeff Hampton with the Hampton Law Firm, and today I want to talk to you about the crime of racing on a highway. Many people refer to it as street racing. And I want to talk to you about this today so that you'll understand what Texas law says has to be proven and what your defenses are. Is there a way to be able to defeat and defend a street racing charge in Texas? And by the way, if you wait around to the end of this video, I'll also give you a free ebook, What to Do If You Have Been Charged with a Crime in Texas. So I kind of laid this out there from the very beginning. I said, can you street race in Texas? And the answer is no. Under Texas criminal law, it is illegal to engage in street racing in Texas. However, many times police officers have a hard time being able to distinguish between whether the activity is actually racing on a highway or reckless driving, or whether it's just people speeding, right? So it's common for police officers to arrest citizens for the crime of racing on a highway when they hear a witness claim to observe someone driving very fast or weaving in and out of traffic. In reality, there may be many reasons why a citizen may be driving the way that they were driving in excess of the speed limit and attempting to weave past traffic that has nothing to do with an actual street race. So I've represented clients charged with the crime of racing on a highway where they were driving responsibly in their car when another careless driver, came up on them and tried to initiate a race, baiting them into a race. And in such a situation, no crime was committed at all, and it was imperative that the case was thoroughly investigated and negotiated for dismissal of the charges. So let's jump into this. What is racing on a highway? Well, under Texas Transportation Code Section 545.420, the district attorney's office will be required to prove the following elements of the crime of racing on a highway beyond a reasonable doubt. Here it is. A person may not participate in any manner in 1, a race, 2, a vehicle speed competition or contest, 3, a drag race or acceleration contest, 4, a test of physical endurance of the operator of a vehicle, or 5, in connection with a drag race, an exhibition of vehicle speed or acceleration, or to make a vehicle speed record. Now look, only a lawyer would write it that way, but essentially you can't drag race, you can't do a race, which is, what does a race mean? There you're talking about one or more vehicles attempting to outdistance or outgain another. We all know what a race is, okay? Now, what is the penalty for street racing or racing on a highway in Texas? So this is important because really it's going to depend on if there were injuries involved and whether or not it's your first offense. Number one, if the accused had no previous convictions for racing on a highway and no one was injured, this is critical, no priors, no injuries, then you're looking at the crime of a Class B misdemeanor, punishable by up to 180 days in jail and up to a $2,000 fine. If you do have a prior conviction for racing on a highway and you pick up your second racing on a highway charge, it is now a Class A misdemeanor punishable by up to 1 year in the county jail and up to a $4,000 fine. Now, it just keeps going. If you have 2 prior convictions, it's a state jail felony, punishable by up to 2 years, 180 days, up to 2 years in a state jail facility, and up to a $10,000 fine. Now, what if an individual suffered bodily injury as a result of the racing on a highway? Well, there the crime could be classified as a 3rd-degree felony, punishable by a term in prison of not less than 2 years, but not more than 10 years, and up to a $10,000 fine. Finally, we get to the last one, which is the most serious of the street racing type crimes you can receive in Texas. If the individual that was involved in the crime suffered serious bodily injury or death, you will now be looking at a 2nd-degree felony, punishable by a minimum of 2, up to 20 years in prison, and up to a $10,000 fine. So let's talk for a few moments about the defenses to a racing on a highway charge in Texas. Number one defense is that you did not participate in a race. Now, what do we mean by that? Under Texas Transportation Code Section 545.420, the state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you actually participated in this race. So think about that. When you look at it, the code does not specifically define what the word participate means in the code, but it does require, the normal meaning of the word would require someone to have acted with some type of criminal intent in order to be found guilty of the crime of racing on a highway. What if you were speeding on a highway, but another person passed you, traveling faster than you, and a police officer noticed you? Maybe you're driving 90 and they're driving 110 and they race by you 120 miles an hour. Police officer just sees you and says, "Boy, these two guys are driving crazy." Does that mean you are guilty of the crime of racing on a highway? No, not necessarily. In this situation, here's what the cops don't know. The police officers are not going to know for sure what happened. So beware the questions that the police officer will ask you when he pulls you over. The police officers are trained to ask you questions and recognize that just because someone is speeding next to another person speeding does not mean they're going to be able to prove that you intentionally were trying to race another person. So the number one tactic that the police officer will use with you every single time is to begin to start asking you questions. Remember, everything you say to a detective can and will be used against you, okay? 100% it will be used against you. And really the danger here is you say, "I'm innocent." Well, the danger is, what if you say something, the officer misinterprets what you said, or maybe the officer just kind of takes it the way he wants to take it and use it against you now. That's all he's going to need in order to establish an arrest for racing on a highway if he misinterprets what you had to say, okay? So by providing that information to the police officer, you place yourself at risk. I'm going to give you an example. We represented a client that was riding with friends in his Mustang and decided to drive faster than he should. I used to have a Mustang when I was a kid, did the same thing. The problem was, as he was driving, he noticed a Porsche 911 coming up on him very fast on his tail, and he kind of sped up a little bit, but he wasn't racing him per se. He zoomed right around him. The Porsche zoomed right around him and took off. Well, the police saw that these two cars were speeding, and so our client was pulled over and questioned by the police officer and subsequently arrested for the crime of racing on a highway. The officer admitted in his report that it appeared to him that both drivers engaged in street racing, but did not specify any specific evidence at all to substantiate what he saw. So there was no evidence showing, remember what the code says, no evidence showing that both cars were trying to outdistance each other or outgain one another or arrive at a destination ahead of another vehicle. There was no evidence showing that one vehicle was trying to prevent the other vehicle from passing, or that both vehicles were driving side by side, accelerating in a particular competitive race. And so the problem was, for the prosecutor, at the end of the day, the evidence only showed that there was a car being driven very quickly, certainly speeding, that car was driving fast next to another car that was driving fast. But the officer ended up having to admit later that it was possible that they weren't racing each other. It was just two cars that were driving quickly. As a result, there was reasonable doubt established as to whether or not our client participated in the race. So if the racing on a highway example above had involved a serious bodily injury or death, our client would have been facing a felony racing on a highway charge. And in that situation, the same analysis would apply, except now we take it out of the hands of having to persuade a prosecutor. We put it in the hands of a grand jury. And every felony in Texas has to be presented to a grand jury. And a grand jury could look at this evidence to see it for itself. They could analyze it, and they've got three choices. Number one, they can true bill the case. A true bill is essentially approving the charge as a felony racing on a highway. They could lower the charge down to a lesser charge and make a determination that instead of the felony charge, maybe it's just reckless driving and it's a misdemeanor, right? That's possible, to drop it from a felony to a misdemeanor. Finally, there's also the option of a no bill. A no bill is the equivalent of the grand jury deciding there is no case here. The case is now going to be dismissed because there's insufficient evidence to substantiate the charge. So listen, if you are facing a racing on a highway charge, it's a big deal to make sure that your case is handled properly, particularly if it's a felony. But whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony, the last thing you want is to have this on your permanent criminal record. You need to find an attorney who's going to sit down with you, go over the facts, go over the digital media evidence, answer all of your questions, make sure that a legal defense is being prepared for you. That way you feel confident as you appear in court. So I want to remind you, maybe you, a friend, or a loved one has been arrested for a racing on a highway charge in the North Texas area. If that's the case, I want to personally invite you to call the Hampton Law Firm at 817-877-5200. I'd be happy to give you a free case analysis or a free consultation. And by the way, I promised you if you waited around till the end of this video, I would also give you a free ebook, What to Do If You Have Been Charged with a Crime in Texas. Click the link below. I'll be happy to send it over to you. And if you liked what you heard here today, subscribe to our channel, hit that little notification button on there so you'll receive future notifications, and like this video, and I look forward to sending you more great content in the future. Thanks for joining us.